Good evening, everybody. I'm still getting things sorted here. We are joined by Mr. Jake Calta. We're going to be talking about his project 365 Infantry. But first, I have to get things posted on X because this did not post the way it was supposed to. So, if you would like to join the chat, please go over to YouTube or Rumble. I will also be trying to watch the chat with Streamlabs, but it does not always catch X notifications or chat messages. I'll do what I can. So, let me say, without any further ado, Jake, can you say hello to the good people and introduce yourself, and then I'll be saying hello to the chat afterwards, and we'll get into a few questions about your Kickstarter here. Mostly dead people at this point. I haven't heard that one in a while. Wait, Jake, wait a second. We have mute. We've got muting going on here. You're coming through on my end. Why are you not going out? Let's see here. I'm gonna need you to say this all again. I'm so sorry. Why would this not be? That is totally bizarre. Yeah, you've got some razor fist comments here. Yeah. You're audio monitoring. All right. How about that? Is that any better for anybody else? Oh, you know
Testing,
what?
testing.
Actually, I'm having a realization that I might know what there's sound. Okay. Bingo, that did it. Okay. All right. There we go.
Indeed.
All right. So
Boomer fist moment, and I wasn't even the
boomer
cause of
fist
it.
moment.
To be
Yeah,
true to
I
the,
apologize.
to be true to the. All right.
Okay, let me make sure that's still working.
I won't reenact.
I don't know why, but apparently you have to be coming not just over my headphones, but also through some other stuff. Anyway, well, that's a little bit odd, but hey. So,
all right, I
let's
won't
just rewind
redo.
and pretend
Yeah,
that we're going to go back to the
absolutely.
information superhighway comment, and we'll
Well, I
restart from
won't
there.
go back
Everybody
through
just
the.
kind of
I won't
reset your minds.
pretend nothing is. I also won't go back and do all the prop shilling. Although there was the one thing I had in my hand, which is relevant to the title of this conversation.
Yeah.
Long and story short is, hello, name's Jake Calta. You may know me from places like ANVIL, IronAge magazine, Go West, Frontier Adventures, which we might be gearing up for submissions. I neither confirm nor deny such things. And also, you may know me for my many trailers and musical endeavors that you might have seen floating around either on X or on Kickstarter projects or Indiegogo projects. I've done work for Kursova, Silence and Stars Song, whole bunch of people. But the main apple of my eye, as it were, is this little thing, 365 Infantry, my multi-narrative sci-fi pulp extravaganza I've been working on since 2022. And I'm currently running a crowdfunder for 365 Infantry, the Ride for 2025, to fund our 4th year of operation. And it is essentially this Hanna-Barbera Power Hour style setup where you have multiple different stories being told within this same world. And the general thrust of it is hot rodding, motorcycle riding wolves fighting against an evil AI in the far distant future. And I didn't intend this when I conceived of it, but of the 25th century. I remember someone asking, I can't remember, was it a chat or in a reply, dude, where's Buck Rogers? And I just told him, in space, or he
Yeah.
ought to be. But yeah, it's basically I'm going around basically saying this. It is everything I love in fiction rolled up into one, but somehow it doesn't sound like a coked up 10-year-old wrote it. It's because I recently did on my podcast series, Quality Candor, I did a 2-hour sit down talking about the many influences and inspirations that went into it. And I always
Mhm.
start with the big three. Blade Runner as my model for cyberpunk, and especially the very film noir tinge side of it. Mad Max, obviously, for the post apocalypse automotive carnage that takes place in the desert wastelands of the series. And the Variety Hour approach really did come from Heavy Metal Magazine. It's been not just that, but also the film from 1981, that whole round robin isn't quite the term for it, but the variety, the ability to go
Mhm.
from, hey, here's this cyberpunk comedy, hey, here's this wartime action piece, hey, here's this semi fantasy tinged adventure series. And it's been a ride, especially because I started out with no one really to read these.
Mhm.
Not just in the whole oh, I'm just starting out, I need to build up the audience, but I didn't have any. I barely had any beta readers. I barely had anything going into the first year. But over the past two, it's shaped up in ways I kind of never expected to. I really am glad, one, not only that I started this because it came about at a very opportune time where I was completely dejected about my own creative work. I
Mhm.
started. I'm a filmmaker by trade. All of this is a giant ruse to get me into the movie somehow. Keyword somehow. And I came up with this literally while I was on set, being the laziest fucking production assistant in the world, and not by choice. I was
Mhm.
expecting to run around playing Gopher, getting people coffees and shit. No, I was just told to sit on my ass for most of the fucking shoot, and so I went upstairs because it was a 2-story house we were filming in. Uh, Made myself scarce as they wanted, and started writing the first 365 story in a fucking closet while they were filming downstairs. And it all just kind of started to spiral from there, building on concepts I'd had coming out of high school, and using all that sweet American Rescue Plan money to get
Yeah.
pre-production started in 2021. So even though my boy Kevin John Jacob, who you've seen art for in Anvil, you've seen
Mhm.
previews of his work in Paladin Dragoon, you've seen him adorning covers such as the Mighty Sons of Hercules Volume 1 and Mage Leaders and Hell Followed with Him. Even though he is based out of the Philippines, I can say this is all American made because of the tax money that went into pre production.
Fair enough.
Indeed.
Uh, okay, let me see here. Now the problem with this setup is that I'm echoing in my own ears, so I'm gonna be a little bit stuttery tonight. Uh, Before we dive into what's going on with the Kickstarter, I'm just gonna say, howdy to everybody in the chat, Skull Fox Games, and Skunks Workshop, Horizon Talker, thank you guys for getting here early and chatting. We will be resuming Scald next week, assuming that, well, hold on. Yes, I will be doing Scald next week, and then I'll be taking a week off um, for a family vacation. Jamie T. Hello, Gunslinger. And let's see here, Sword Rush. Thank you, as always, for hanging out. I think that hopefully I'm a little bit more even. I heard some comments that I was a little bit too quiet. Hey there, Immortal Rising. Good to see you. I saw that. I think are you on to number 3 now? You're cruising right along, man. Um, just gonna say brainstorm lore over on Rumble. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Guilty Gearhead as well. And if I missed you, I'm ignoring Herman P. Hunter, of course. It's always a good policy, I figure. So, uh, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about uh, your plans with this crowdfunder. And let me get over to the window where it is actually at. Oh no! Don't change the window scale, or else it screws with the
It's
It just
the
snapped it
browser
down.
the
That's
browser's
super handy. I love this. You
the
know,
the the
sometimes
the
sometimes
the s-
Streamlabs is
the
great.
str-
Sometimes it is just a freaking mess. Anyway,
it,
yeah,
it, it cr-
we'll call it good.
Streamlabs cries out as it strikes you.
But
Anyway,
let's not. Well, I won't. I won't torture the metaphor any further. Um,
indeed.
m- but yeah, so tell us about what you were wanting to do here. Do you want me to play this right here?
No, because it'll turn into like a weird
Echo Fest.
yeah, because it's basically a video of me telling you part of what's going on. So I can just tell it to you
Ah,
live. It'll be an
okay.
interactive experience. Now, long and short of it is the series is founded on this magazine format. We have 5 stories every quarter with a single illustrated piece as kind of supplement to give you a taste of what the world's looking like and how, some of the action you're about to read in each story. The main series story is the war, which is the primary fight
Hmm.
between this arch villain Aces, the sentient AI network that controls a futuristic city of Haven in the American Southwest in the far off future, and the titular 365th Infantry, which is shall we say, a redneck's dream, which is waging war on AI with hot rods, freaking chop hogs, and all sorts of crazy gadgets and shit, and led by the stoic General Knox, who has quite the axe to grind. And many of the stories feature the foot soldier Gibson Blanc, who rises up to the rank of lieutenant and is sort of this everyman hero who's in the thick of a lot of these these bizarre scenarios. We have that. Then we have The Hunt, which is kind of this adventure series side quest focused on a very particular point of Ace's MO, which is
Hmm.
slowly converting wolves into these cybernetic killing machines. And it follows three escapees and the wife of one as this quartet trying to find where this little den of radicalization is held within Haven and destroy it once and for all, while also fulfilling the classic American adventure series type trope of rolling into town, fixing people's problems, and then fucking off to their main task. The 2 main episodic series we have are The Urban Avenger, which is a bit of cyberpunk anarchy starring my favorite hippie punk, Lita, and her blood red VW bug, the Red Devil, as they basically tear
Now,
around the streets of hate.
now let's pause for just a second.
Oh
For
boy.
anybody who's not familiar with the kind of setting here, now you're gonna rattle off some characters as well as their rides. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the um, I don't necessarily want to call it like the inspiration like Mad Max style, but can you give us a little bit more insight into like why these things are paired up? You know what I mean? Character and ride.
I'd say part of it is the actual characterizations, because I always talk about this when I'm at cruisins with a lot of the guys who own all these various cars, which is the nice
Mm-hmm.
thing about a lot of 20th century rides, especially like 80s and prior, is just the sheer volume of character in the designs, in their appearance. And I talked about this in an article regarding specifically the choice of the VW Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
It's I like the idea of not just, because the thing is, there's a certain level of irony that's always been with the VW Beetle. I mean, people have always said, hey, you know what's funny? Making this small economy car do retarded shit in movies. It's like everyone can think about National Lampoon's European Vacation, and there's that big final chase with the
Mm-hmm.
late 70s Super Beetle, going all throughout. I think it's Italy is where the film takes place, if I'm not mistaken. People think about that. People obviously think about the love bug Herbie from the Disney movies. But this particularly pairing it with Lita, is kind of
Mm-hmm.
this all-in-one package of this 2 sides of sort of rebellion across American history. You have the weed smoking, denim wearing hippie, that's just all about freedom, man.
Mm-hmm.
Driving around in one of the patron saints of the counterculture of the late 60s. And of course, the punk rock attitude that emerged in the 70s and crosses over with a lot of the overall heavy metal inspirations of the series. Because the funny thing is, the mohawk wasn't my idea. That was Kevin's. And I love when artists bring stuff like that to the table, where I just said, hey, you got this rough and tumble kind of character. And he initially had created this really nice scruffy hairdo in the original concept illustrations. But then when he made it a full-on mohawk in the final concept piece, I'm like, hell yes. And we fucking ran with it ever since. So a lot of the cars are being picked on for character reasons. To go back to the hunt, for example, one of the most transformative characters in that series is Marcus, who's the furthest along in this breaking down in this broken down mental state. He starts the series as basically a light switch flip Jekyll and Hyde character, a sweet, kind, caring guy who has a bit of a childishness about him, but the moment anyone comes to threaten, his wife Sabina or his friends, because he makes friends with Valentina soon, very, very early on in the series, he absolutely goes into like a blackout murderous rage. He is very much it could be any moment he is finally sent over the edge.
Yeah.
But there's this funny contrast because he drives a 1960 DeSoto Adventurer. And for those who know anything about the DeSoto Adventurer, you'll know that it has that big, funny, smiling bumper. And anyone who knows a few things about video games may recognize that as the car from the Sam and Max series that's done up as a police cruiser. And I chose that because I like the sheer volume of character. And plus, there is that sort of, again, there's that slight undercurrent of irony in that you have this very happy looking car, and behind the wheel is 9 times out of 10, a very kind, caring, fellow. But then there's that 1 out of 10 moment where if you see that car coming and he does not look like he's a happy man behind the wheel, your ass is fucking grass.
Yeah.
So that's kind of part of the decision making with that. And to go forward into the last of the episodic series, Speed Freak Files, which for those who don't know are the adventures of a heavy metal band whose day job are lawmen in the wild world of the Wastelands. And the leader of it all is Nick Ridgefield, who's kind of this linking character throughout the entire series, because later on in his life, he becomes chief of engineer for the 365th. So in the war, he's always the guy telling you, hey, this is the vehicle Aces is remaking, or hey, this is something that the enemy's pulling out of their ass here. And in Urban Avenger, he's actually Lita's long-distance lover. And so you have a few moments where the two will cross over from series to series. But in Speed Freak Files, I chose a late 70s Toyota Hilux because everyone and their mother knows the Hilux is basically the most indestructible vehicle in.
Yeah,
I love this.
Curse these laws. I want somebody to actually do something about the Chevron defense being struck down and start importing some Hilux, man.
Dude,
I saw on Twitter, I saw somebody griping because they were like, you're 95. I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was an F-250 or a Ram 2500 or what it was, but basically a mid 90s, like under 100,000 mile diesel truck, and they're like, it's not worth 2750, or 27,500, and everybody was kind of chiming in. They're like, actually, that's unfortunately that's about right. That's about how much they're worth now, because everything since the late 90s has been neutered and slowly destroyed. Yeah, I know. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
mild tangent there. I just want a real truck. That's all.
And the funniest and my favorite story is I watched a guy who did a video on most Australian things ever, and because the Hilux fortunately was not banned down under, and his favorite joke is if you get into a traffic accident with a Toyota Hilux, the driver will come out and apologize to you because their car will be fine and yours will be fucked. Like it is the Captain Scarlet of fucking trucks. And I mean, obviously everyone's seen the Top Gear special where they like put the damn thing through the ringer every possible way and it's still turned over every single time.
Yeah,
And that's the reason why, and that's the reason why I picked it for Nick specifically, because
mhm,
Ridgefield, on top of just being the thing about the Wastelands is that there's a lot of characters that are just they're very wonderful people. They're just slightly insane,
mhm.
just a slight head case. And Nick is one of those completely nonchalant in the face of bizarre crooks and irradiated thugs and all sorts of insanity. And it's like you need a cinder block on wheels like the Hilux to get through
Hmm.
all of that kind of madness.
Yeah,
And so
speaking of
that's,
Cinderblock on wheels, and also
oh boy.
Horizon Talker in chat mentioning the Cybertruck as being far inferior to a real truck. I tell you what,
Yep.
if they would put a diesel engine into a Cybertruck, I would actually dig it, just because it's this little death, this low poly death machine driving down. Like you get hit by that, like you're the pedestrian's not walking away. There's no crushing plastic. I'm just cyclists. Okay, somebody needs to do something about them, and I'm just ready for. I'm
Oh
ready
dear
to
God.
face the scourge. Just give me my stainless steel machine so that I can, yeah, get some good industrial grade cleaners and get the evidence right off of that thing lickety split. I don't want to have.
Damn.
I don't need to be doing any time. So anyway.
Dun dun dun. Vehicular manslaughter aside, although plenty of that occurs in this series, the key word is that it's fictional and it's done with wolves, not people, so it's legally distinct. Um,
Yes, and there are
Casually
no there's no
disavowing my
cyclists.
boss on air.
I don't think I've ever there's no nobody riding around on bicycles, insisting that they're obeying the traffic laws even though they're doing 25 under the speed limit. I've never encountered that in any of your stories. So the
Fair enough,
motorcycles.
because there are loads of motorcycles, and that's another thing about the reason why I pick vehicles is that sometimes sometimes it's all in the look, or it's all in a very weird sort of metatextual there's a metatextual reason for it. A
Hmm.
good example is that the character of Gibson, his backstory, and it's something that I might go into in a proper story. Like this year, we turned our final part of the magazine, Tales from the Front Lines, which is just this anthology to explore the world. One story that just kind of takes you around the horn wherever we are wherever we are in Haven or the Wastelands. We're devoting it to a 3-part serial about the day General Knox, who people who've seen art of him know that he has a cybernetic augmentation. He has a metal arm. We were doing a story about the day he lost that arm.
Hmm.
And so I might do something similar for Gibson, because he too is an escapee of Haven. And there's a moment when he finally
Now,
gets out.
just to, yeah, I was going to say all of these things are woven together, but
Yeah,
with Haven, that is obviously the the place where Aces is in control, and so that's where everything's
yes,
going on in terms of the experimentation and
yes,
whatnot. That is
absolutely.
that is your dystopia. Most did you say it's like
That is the central
the
that is
most dystopian
yeah.
aspect of it?
And
Yeah.
to just get into that bit first, and then we'll pull a Jen Psaki and circle back around to the vehicle question. Uh, the series is kind of broken. The series is interesting in that it also is taking place at two very different times
Mm,
with where everything is in terms of development. Haven starts out as there is a point in time where, for those who don't know, because I actually published when we did our first issue of the physical and ebook version of the quarterly, I actually published our timeline for the very first time. And basically, what happens is the bombs drop in the year 2200, and it's about almost a century in when Haven is established, and then half century thereafter, or probably I'd say more 10, 30 years in, that's when the development of Aces as just this basic overarching network to control all the various things to keep this post-scarcity society running. Because basically enough of the
mhm.
dreamers get involved in the founding of it, hence the name Haven, that they want to turn it into this into a proper utopia. And
Yeah.
so during this phase where Havens is being established, that's when all of the really classic Weird West, like Fallout type stuff happens. But at the point we're now in with the series, which all takes place in the span of the 2460s through to the 2470s,
Hmm.
Haven becomes your classic cyberpunk dystopia because is so far along in her sentience that she has started taking out the people that normally take care of her, and of course, the entropy starts to set in.
Hmm.
But at the same time, throughout the series, you see that it almost seems she grows more powerful as she loses those people as they start to fade away, or wolves, I should say, because I do. My blessing and curse is that because I'm not approaching this from any of like the anthro preconceptions, is that I tend to write these characters and just thinking about them emotionally as people, and then adding the elements of the anthropomorphication, the fur, claws, etc. But anyway, so Haven becomes this classic cyberpunk dystopia after enjoying a
Hmm.
genuine period of utopian bliss. But the wastelands almost become sort of what everyone wishes a libertarian exit project becomes, instead of it becoming a money pit and people being lost in Amazonian jungles and shit.
I was going to
Um,
make an age of consent question there, but yeah,
yeah,
I'll
dear
leave
God,
it be.
here
I'll leave it be.
we're walking
Yeah,
so many
the
lines tonight.
libertarian paradise. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, let's listen. Point is, it becomes this sort of this idea where it's a lot of these loosely connected villages and settlements that have basically there's mutual agreements that happen between everyone that keeps the the general gist of society going. But in the context of the world, the Southwest seems to be the only place where there is any population.
Hmm.
It's become cut off from the rest of the world. And one of the stories we're actually doing right now in the main serial The War is we're sending two characters, one of my favorites, Captain Thomas Grim Herrera, who is this who is a one of the main captains of the auto corps, because the infantry is broken up into auto corps as in four wheels and then moto corps as in two,
Hmm.
is sent out with a civilian adventurer to investigate the lands out east, in particularly in search of a new enemy faction that was revealed at the top of last year, known as the Black Country, that are
Hmm.
essentially playing all sides and coming down the middle to take everything for what it's worth. And there are some of the last vestiges of that, Fallout-esque, okay, we got really weird monsters out here and shit, and we have a lot of these strange beings, and it's like, why are these somehow relegated out here, but yet everywhere within this vicinity of Haven and within the wasteland seems to have, settled down to what appeared to be pre-apocalypse normalcy in a way.
Hmm.
And so there's a
Hmm.
lot of those questions that are floating around the setting.
So,
But yeah, Haven is the main Haven is the main dystopian element, whereas the wastelands are almost
mhm.
counterintuitively settled into something. I always term it something of a rustic paradise. There's almost a bit of that
Mhm.
rockabilly, rock and roll era, kind of. If there was to be a dreamland version of that, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, and just so anybody who's not been following, uh, you have I'm going to pop over to Amazon real quick here, but you have a number of collections up here, and the first is the 2022 collection. So
Yes.
there's a number of these. You've started moving to quarterlies as well. Um,
Yeah, and
but
and and I can explain that too because we
how
can.
many as far as well here we'll go back to the Kickstarter because I know that it's I honestly forget where it is on Kickstarter where the rewards are, but I know that you have
That would be supporting the force is the
okay,
place you're
so
looking for.
that's a ways down. Okay,
Yeah,
but I don't want to jump too far, but there's a ton of backstory here, and so this for
right.
2025 is really continuing quite a ways into this project. But for people
Yeah,
who are just getting started, uh, you have um, a lot. You have plenty for people to understand what's going on and get up to speed over on the Substack. It's just not collected into a nice, uh, a nice package like the collections are. Is
So
that correct?
to clarify everything you're talking about here, because this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I've also had issues with selling people on, which is the long and short of it is this: this series started out as a free webzine,
Mm-hmm.
and we publish on Substack. We publish the 5 stories there for free every quarter. Art's at the top of the page. It's all there. Uh, and what we do is we then collect them. We first started by collecting them as annuals. So we
Mm-hmm.
started with the 2022, and then we recently did the 2023. And that is basically all 4 stories within all 5 of the series. And then occasionally we'll do bonuses. Like the thing with the Kickstarter is that because we finally expanded the original novelette from our first edition, Lines Among the Lambs, into our first full spy novella with our spy character, Roger Steele, who's essentially sent by the infantry into the bowels of Haven to actually find where
Mm-hmm.
the equipment and machinery of Aces, where all the servers are housed. We finally expanded that into a full-on novella, The Short Circuit Revolution, which is its own standalone story with a bit of that 70s conspiracy thriller flair.
Mm-hmm.
Now that that's on its own, we're writing a new and original Roger Steele adventure for that 2022 collection to take its place. And in the 23, we did a test comic last year, just a short 4-page piece riffing on Lita and her whole kind of place in the world of the series, called the Avengers Creed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of things that we add at the end of those. And the difference between that and, say, the quarterly is that the quarterly will also have special introductions, bonus articles taking you behind the scenes. When we did this, our summer edition, we did the War Machines of 365 Infantry, where we actually talked about some of the real military tech that we use as inspirations for stories
Mm-hmm.
and for equipment throughout the series. So basically, obviously you're only getting the 5 stories as they're released in conjunction with the Substack. And again, the big thing you're basically paying for is the convenience of reading them in an actual book, because I do know that the newsletter format doesn't work for everyone. And the only reason why I really went with it is because it's kind of like there's no one else really in the game. You look at a lot of the older blogs, and the presentation is just not up to snuff with the tools you have access to on Substack.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, a lot of the old fan fiction places that you could go and take a project like 365, they're not built for the scope of it. I was considering, and I am considering possibly doing the serials on Royal Road, but that's very decentralized. That is you have the
Yeah.
book going down. And plus also there's issues of frequency. You have to, publish very consistently, whereas we're on a very not sparse schedule, but because of the quality of product we're trying to achieve, we give ourselves the luxury of time to get it all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, because it's basically
Yeah. I
you're writing a
understand that.
novella's worth every quarter, more or
Mm-hmm.
less. So the long and short of it is there's a lot in it, but I think it looks more than it honestly is, because the intention we with a lot of this series is that while we do have the serial narratives, we try to write it in a way where you can pop in, you get the gist of what the conflicts are, you get a gist of what the problems are, and you basically you can get easily caught up to speed in just about any story. It benefits from starting at the beginning, starting with, say, the 2022 collection, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only issue. There are trade-offs with both formats. Annual collection, obviously, you're waiting an entire year to get it, but
Mm-hmm.
you also get everything's there, so you can basically kind of binge your way through the stories up to that point. Uh, but with the quarterly, obviously, you're staying up to date. But obviously, as individual stories, you might feel like you're missing out on a few things. And also, we started this year, so we're not retroactively doing what are
Yeah.
essentially issues 1 through 7, unless the fans demand it. And also we have to do like a special retro collector's bundle pack version
Yeah.
of everything,
Yeah.
to
Yeah. And that, as somebody who, as we both know, uh,
Right.
dealing with that kind of thing in terms of just layout is not. It's a fair amount of work, you know. Even if you're just dealing with five or like a half dozen images and just text, even that is
Right.
by the time that you actually get it done, and especially whenever you try to get it looking good through the Amazon print on demand, that's like an extra
Yeah.
layer of hassle on everything.
100%.
Yeah, although, yeah. Anyway, I won't get too sidetracked there, but let's. Uh, I've been looking
Well,
at Alan Firedale for a while here. Do you want
the,
to?
yes, this was one of the innovations near the end of the first year. But when I was still in college, I had a digital storytelling class, and I was racking my brain for an idea, and then literally, actually, I wasn't even racking my brain for an idea. Early on, when I was handed,
Mhm,
the opportunity, said, "Hey, we have to do a final project, at the end of your 15 weeks." I immediately thought, "Fuck, I'd love to do an audio drama." And then I'm
mhm,
thinking, what if I can dovetail that into 365? And what I wound up creating was Alan Firedale Desert Delinquent, which is this in-universe radio drama. It is something that is actually listened to by Wastelanders, young and old. It's pitched generally as a family sort of production. But I'd say in the same way classic Doctor Who from the 60s and 70s was, where there's a level of
mhm,
maturity to it, but just about anyone can get into it. And it's about this young vagabond, this young red wolven vagabond, and his AI enhanced car, Golden Cloud, as they roam the desert, solving various mysteries and also thwarting the evil plans of a certain General Langdon and his distant empire of San Cipre. Which sort of is this in-world allegory for the troubles, the people of the wastelands face, in
mhm,
in in the shadow of Ace's inner tyranny. And so it's a one-man show, canonically by a fellow by the name of Stan Winshaw, who reads it as an audiobook and performs all the voices. And
mhm,
in the real world, that is in fact me doing it. That is me performing it. That is me writing the music for it, which pulls on my love of classic Jerry Anderson shows like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet.
yeah,
The premise itself, obviously, there's a bit of a Knight Rider element to it, but the difference is with the character of Golden Cloud, which hews more towards being very gentle and innocent and almost kind of childlike. And so there's a bit of this a boy and his dog sort of
How much
component,
of
albeit not nearly as
oh no,
cynical.
I'm blanking out. Uh what is that one movie? It's from the 60s or 70s, but it's with a VW Bug that is
Well,
in
I
some way.
mentioned that early on, the love bug. I mentioned that
Yeah, I
early on
know.
as,
Is
yeah,
it
because
just the Love Bug? What's its name?
no, no, that's
Is it
literally the name of the no, that is literally that is the name of the first Herbie film because the
Herbie?
character's name
Okay,
is
I
Her.
was looking for Herbie. Okay.
Young man, where have you been? That was back when we were talking about Lita and her
I know
fucking
you said
weed
Love Bug.
fueled VW.
Yeah, but you didn't say. Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking Herbie. Anyway, I've been
Anyway,
grasping it. That's been in the
that
back of my
is
mind for quite some time, and
that
I've
is
been like,
part
"What the heck was that name?"
that is definitely part of the inspiration too, because
Hmm.
even though I haven't found a satisfactory way of vocalizing the effects. That's generally the way she communicates. Golden Cloud is actually through her horn, as opposed to from voice synthesizer like Kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like the idea of, well, obviously there's a bit of again some of the slight irony of, oh, the wolves driving the car and the car acts like the dog. Obviously there's a bit of that, but it's more that there's this very, very warm sort of rapport between the two, and I love. They're one of my. There's a certain type of duos that I write in this series. There are a lot of different types of duos that I write in this series, and that is very much a sort of, not necessarily, I wouldn't say paternal necessarily, but the character of Firedale definitely takes care of Golden Cloud, and while Golden Cloud also, through all the gadgets and all the technical wizardry, helps him out through all the various scrapes.
Yeah.
And the difference between this and, say, the main series is not just the general idea of pitching it more towards being a sort of a family production,
Mhm.
but is that tonally it pulls more from the era of Johnny Quest and more from the old style
Ah.
adventure serials where a lot of really bizarre stuff will happen in a half hour, but it's all wrapped up by the end. And it's
Mhm.
almost, there's a bit of a brushing off of it. Not in that, oh, we'll never acknowledge this ever happened again, but that we acknowledge it's happened. It's just part of the way we're doing things now. Let's
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
going from there.
I
My
I have no
favorite,
I have no objections to episodic media. I kind of wish that we would move
right,
back towards it just in general.
right,
Not everything. It's gotten so bad that it's just like I just don't even bother watching a lot of things that people will claim are good. You know,
right,
particularly with TV. You know, because they're like,
right.
we're gonna set it up for the second season, and whoops, we didn't actually make the first season good enough to really warrant it, or you know,
There's
it,
nothing currently released that could fit that description now,
right?
could
Yeah,
there?
it's actually harder to figure out what doesn't fit that description. Um,
Right. Well, I mean, I think also, well, that's also part of the thing too with the way that I try to write the series is that, and I've been noticing this too in certain serialized shows. Like I mentioned classic Doctor Who earlier.
mhm,
There's a trick you'll notice where going episode to episode, there are certain phrases that'll be left in, that'll be repeated across the episodes to get audience members caught up. Like there's an
mhm,
exact line for line mentioning of things. So if someone, missed episode 1, like I just started The Mind of Evil, which is a serial from John Pertwee's run as the Third Doctor, who actually
mhm,
became something of an inspiration for a character in the Urban Avengers series. This who's more of a general sleuth, but anyway, and I noticed there were certain phrases, in regards to this machine that's manages take all these evil impulses out of the human mind and traps them essentially in this single device. And so there are
mhm.
certain things they'll have tied to that it's like, okay, that's being carried from episode to episode to get people caught up.
Yeah.
Or I look at it similarly to the way they write, the way they were doing, because I think I have some back up here on the shelf, so they're sitting lying having a lie down, is the way they approach serialization in the old weekly comics, like because
Mhm.
I got a stack of Marvel Conans back there, and they're technically a serial, but you can enjoy each adventure as a standalone, just that
Yeah.
adventure. And that's kind of how I try to approach that. So even if it looks a little daunting, I try to give people jumping on points, and
Mhm.
giving them a chance to say, hey, if you just want to try this series with this setup, this is a story you can do. And that's the nice thing about doing Alan Firedale, is that there were some storylines that were carrying over, and we ultimately put a hold on a lot of those after doing a two-parter, the Cypress Fires. And
Mm.
now we're just
Yeah.
kind of in our real classic Johnny Quest episodic mode, where the summer episode was Cosmic Conflagration, which is about a UFO crash landing. And it might not be smoke and mirrors. It might be an actual alien, guys.
Right. Yeah.
And I had so much fun writing and performing that episode. And the new one we have coming up, Devil's Gold, is returning to one of the episodes that I left up for free, Flames Along the Homeland, which is about this settlement that I take inspiration from sort of general Southwestern Native American culture, but
Mhm.
specifically, I've been learning how to phonetically pronounce Navajo words for these
Yeah.
characters. And what happens is we're checking back in on this settlement, and they have just discovered a gold deposit in the mine they took over. After being brainwashed into working for dear Mr. General Langdon, uh,
Mhm.
through a I love listening back to these episodes because I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell was I thinking coming up with these? But then you listen to it and it's like, nah, it all makes sense at the end. Anyway, so they not only have this gold deposit, but there have also been disappearances happening in the mine. And let's just say, again, it might not be the general sitting at the back with a hovercraft, blowing holes in people's backs. There might be monsters lurking in the dark. And so that's kind of
Mhm.
the general setup of Devil's Gold. And it's definitely leaning a bit more into sort of the neo-Western flavor of this series, because that also is another thing I like about the Wastelands, is that there's a lot of Western imagery and iconography.
Yeah,
You know, it's
absolutely.
everyone walking around in the cowboy hats and the cowboy boots. Golden Cloud, actually, and let me just look this up quickly so I don't embarrass myself in front of our thousands of fine viewers. But Golden Cloud was actually, if I'm not mistaken, the original name of Roy Rogers' horse, Trigger. And
Hmm.
that's where I'd come up with the name Golden Cloud. And because I like the idea of that being kind of a subtle salute to one of the great, you know, American cowboy heroes. And so there's elements of that. There's elements of, I'd say, archetypically speaking, there's, you know, a lot of classic, you know, there's Mexican standoffs, and there's, you know, a lot of the, you know, lone man standing up against mob kind of stories, like a High Noon sort of deal. And there's just a lot of that old west blood coursing through the series,
Yeah.
especially in characters like the first general of the infantry, General Leonard Ford Godred, who started out as this old west style lawman trying to bring peace to the wastelands in the immediate, you know, in the slow reconvening of civilization. And he is also one of my favorites to write, because I write him as a complete history nerd. So he has a reference and an allusion to just about everything, and it makes for a lot of fun writing this sort of this cultured man, this cultured character, bringing his smarts to the table wherever he can fit them in. It's just so much. I could talk about. That's also the problem too. You notice how I get lost in a lot of this. It's because
Yeah.
every it's because that is also the blessing and curse of this, that this is a very expansive series. I
Hmm.
write so many one-offs in this series, and that's the other thing too. Like the other thing we're funding in this as an add-on is our second electric anthology volume.
Hmm.
Because what we're doing on Substack is not just the 5 stories every quarter, but I've been writing a weekly anthology of flash fiction, you know,
Hmm.
every week during the off season. So you get about 2 months worth of flash stories, and you know, then we run the main magazine, then we take a break, and then we come back and we do it all again. And so I've been really building this world. You know, most people think, you know, to build the world, oh, I've got to write this giant lore bible, I have to have 50 million documents, I have to write a new language, I have to, you know, reconstruct the Cimmerillion for my
Yeah.
own world. But what I've been doing is just writing stories, because that's how I explore the world best. I take complete one-off characters and I just
Hmm.
put them in situations within the context of the world and see where they get. And I've created some of my favorite characters from this series. Great example. Last year, I wrote a story called Pop Was a Rock Climber. It was a one
Hmm.
off story about this big, burly hound who is dropped down a fucking canyon after a drag race goes, shall we say, less than aptly.
Hmm.
Um, Here's my video is lagging, but we'll keep trudging on. The audio is coming out fine.
Well,
As
it's
as as
perfect.
it's
It's perfect because I can't see, because right now I have the browser window up in front of you. So it's just those pesky viewers that might be having some trouble. So we don't
good
have to worry
heavens.
about them.
Anyway, so you know, the drag race goes less than optimally. Let's just say there was some rigging, and that's all. I'll
Hmm.
leave it at that. And but the thing is, all the while, you know, he's had this accident with his, I think it's his 6-year-old son in the car, and he just stays completely level-headed, completely relaxed, and he says, "Look, dude, we're getting right out of this. We're getting right through this."
Hmm.
And climbs his fucking Jeep Cherokee up the canyon wall, goes hell bent for leather on the assholes who did that.
Hmm.
And just when he's almost, you know, almost about to knock the last one down, his son's like, "I think we scared them off, Pop." And he's like, "Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go
probably
home. It's
so.
been a
That's
long day."
probably enough.
And that character, his name is Buck Sterling, and I later gave him a main magazine debut in a Speed Freak file story on the rocks.
Mhm.
where he slowly reveals himself to just be like dad of the fucking year all years.
Mhm.
And there is no other great hook. There is no cruel, terrible backstory. There is no tortured metaphor for his existence. He's just a wholesome fucking dad running around with his fucking souped up car. It's got like, I think, 2 or 3 kids. I can't remember off the top of my head. I typically write them with 2. And it's just this absolute. Every time I write a story with him, I just got a big smile on my face. Every single time. And I cannot get enough of him as a character and as Christian. And that's the thing I love about writing these one-offs. And
Mhm.
it's also, if nothing else, the Electric Anthology might actually be a better way of exploring the. Am I lagging? You're making weird
Uh,
faces.
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
All right.
you're there you go. You're moving for me at least.
Okay.
All right,
Am
there we
I
go.
back? Because no problem. No problem.
It's
This
bad.
this is what I
Uh-oh.
get.
It might be my problem here. It's
Yeah. Let me
possible.
also give me a second. Let me check something.
Uh Hold on. I'm going to make sure that's not the problem. All right, the rest seems normal. Okay, so it's just Jake. Ah, he's returned. He's returned. Whoa.
I
Uh-oh.
have returned.
We've gone pixelated. There we go. You're back to human.
Okay, good. I was just double
Okay.
checking my mobile data. I'm doing this off my mobile data at the moment, so I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I hadn't ran out of anything.
he was like 32 pixels at 5
Dear
FPS.
God.
So, whenever he first joined. So, listen, we're going to be wrapping up here before too long, but I'm not going to let you get out of here without talking about the reward tiers and what's available with the
All
Kickstarter
right.
and what kind of plans you have regardless of how this goes and everything else.
All right. So pull up. I'll pull it up on my end too, and conserve whatever internet juju is happening. I've closed off the YouTube tab, so I have no
Yeah.
idea what the chat is. I'm going in blind. Long and short of it is, we are offering orders on our 2024 annual, which will be
Hmm.
shipping around
Hey,
February of next year.
I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second. Okay, because apparently the whole stream is might get a mortis after all. I'm going to make sure that. Let's see here. I'm just in case Jessica opened up a Steam or something and it started. Did mine? You know what? I know exactly what happened. I knew. I should have known. Stop it. I holy smokes, that's it. Pause everything. I just had the realization. I was like, I wonder if Jessica started downloading something or whatever else. And I just checked, and Steam in the background is downloading. It's updating Hunt, which is Hunt Showdown, which had a complete overhaul, complete re-release. So
Oh
it's probably like
God!
80
What?
gigs that it's trying to download right now.
Jesus, tap dancing Christmas. Okay, so
I don't know. We'll see if that's any better. Chat, can you say if that's improved at all?
testing 1 2 3, and I'm also going to go back over because you're not getting away without me ranting
Yeah,
about
yeah.
my
I'm
all
gonna
time.
have you start over on the reward tiers, but
All right.
I'm not seeing now. Now chat's gone quiet all of a sudden. I don't
Gosh,
know. Maybe the
I
stream is
love.
dead and I haven't figured it out yet. Hmm. Well,
Let's see, live
all right.
chat.
You guys have a few moments. Yeah, it doesn't look like they can hear us. Why would that be? You killed it. It's not downloading.
I
Nothing
think
is
everyone.
downloading. All right.
All right, I know Skull Fox Games is boogieing out, so Godspeed to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say adios, folks. If you've got to head out, that's totally fine. We're gonna hang out for another 10, 15 minutes and discuss the review tiers. Yeah, nice going, Hunt. So man, they may be way behind. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and start going. It seems like
All right.
the stream is catching back up now. So that's
Oh
that's
man.
good.
All right. And first off, do not say a damn word because this is going to be a bit of a long one.
Okay, all right. I will allow you to do
You
the
can
spiel.
ask. The class can ask questions at the end of the speech. All right.
All right.
So the main thing we are doing with 365 Imagery is that because we have so much of a back catalog, we are offering up bundled collections of. We've got a recruitment package, which is the first 2 annual collections. So all of the stuff that isn't coming out in this quarterly form, that's going to be all bound together in packages. Everything, by the way, all options are both digital and physical, and our physicals are going to be paperbacks. So we have bundled collections of that. We also have our both barrels tier, which includes not just those first 2 annuals, but also the Electric Anthology Volume 1. So all of the flash fiction from last year. And I may have gone a little overboard, so that's going to be a lot of flash fiction. And our spy novella, The Short Circuit Revolution. We are also taking orders on the 2024 annual, that'll be coming out at the near the top of next year, and I believe it will ideally start shipping in February of next year. And we're also taking extremely advanced pre-orders on the 2025 annual. After all, you're funding the 2025 year. So if you have the patience of a saint and want to get in on everything at a super, super low price, those are your tiers to back. But we're also, now that we have the quarterly magazine, we're also offering options on that as well. So you can subscribe to the 2025 365 Imagery Quarterly. And, we have both digital and physical versions of that. And we also have a special kind of, big fan pack tiers. The Valued Lieutenant tier, which is all 4 issues of the quarterly, all of our 2025 releases. So that's going to be all of this year, 2024 stories, all bundled up in nice collections for you to read at your leisure. And of course, a t-shirt of your choice, because we have quite a few designs on our TeePublic and Redbubble stores. Thank God I didn't mix those up. And our top brass tier for 120, which is all of that plus your choice of t-shirt and your choice of mug. And we also have add-ons on top of all that, including year-long packages for Alan Firedogs. You can get year 1, year 2. You can get them bundled with soundtracks, because I've been releasing the OSTs on Bandcamp, and it was actually my first full-length album. Was the first Alan Firedale soundtrack. My first half-hour album was that soundtrack. And again, it's a lot, but at the same time, it's also value for money. You're getting a chance to dive into an incredibly rich world at as close to true pulp prices as we can manage. It's like I'm turning into a used car salesman every time I sell this series. I have done my fucking damnedest. I've run the numbers. I've checked everything as far as print costs, as far as shipping, which of course is hell. And it kills me that that's one of the big things we have to deal with now is shipping costs in the modern day. But I have done everything tooth and nail to make this series, as affordable as possible. Because not only do I believe in the work that I'm doing, but I also believe people should be able to get it in this day and age where so much is fucking going up in price. And that leads a lot of people to, having to make the decision, okay, so do I cut the entertainment spending and, barely get by making groceries, or do I at least carve out this one moment of reprieve so I can relax the mind, not worry about the day-to-day strife, and enjoy myself, even if it's for, a half hour at a time, thumbing through a story. And so that is everything we got on offer. And we do have stretch goals, and I know obviously we are still quite a ways from at least hitting our main goal, but we do still have stretch goals. And that is,
Mhm.
we will be doing comics at the end of our 2024 and 2025 annual collections, and we also aim to do a illustrated edition of our second electric anthology, because now that I've come to approach the red light bites thing with focus, I've been writing some of the most action packed stories that I can do in 500 words, and I think some of those side characters deserve to be shown more often than I do with the quarterly format. But the other thing you mentioned is what happens if we don't fund.
Mhm.
Well, to announce this bit of news, because I'll also be mentioning this in newsletters and in updates.
Mhm.
If we do not fund on this first go round, I am going to be trying a second chance campaign in October. And in all fairness, part of that has simply been the fact that I I'm doing this while working on our latest issue, our 10th issue
Mhm.
overall, which will also be our third issue of the quarterly. Um, and that's been a bit of a logistics nightmare. So I haven't had a chance to really push out all the promotional stuff I wanted to do. I haven't got a chance to get on as many shows as I'd like to. Because I also fully admit that I'm a very small operation compared to everything else. Compared to your Rippaverses, hell, compared to your Anvils, 365 Infantry is a very small project, but there's also
Mhm.
the niche appeal factor. So we are going to be doing a second chance campaign in October. But if you back right now, if you back anything, and I mean, I've been blessed with some of the most generous fans in the world. I'm offering these things at the lowest prices I can, but I'm having people pay insane markups out of the kindness of their hearts to get this series over the finish line. I
Mhm.
posted about this on X. I've gotten people who, when I'm offering something for 70, I had one guy adjust his pledge to pay 150.
Mhm.
When I offer, Christ's sakes, I had some guy pay 70, which would have got you to valued lieutenant tier. That's all 4 issues, that's a t-shirt, that's all the 2025 books.
Mhm.
Sent me 70 just as a donation, just to get
Yeah.
it over the finish line. I am truly blessed to have some of the best damn fans in the world. We're small, but by God, we're mighty. So if you back right now, if you back before this closes on Wednesday, September 4th, here's what you're getting. You are guaranteed a digital copy of the latest quarterly. And
Mhm.
remember, that's not just the 5 stories being published on Substack. That's also not that special introduction. That's a bonus article, which, in honor of it being our 10th issue overall, is going to be a 10 electrifying facts about 365 infantry, which will be going into some of the behind the scenes stories and some of the very specific things that were inspirations for
Mhm.
various characters and for various ideas. And you're going to be getting the latest episode of Alan Firedale, Desert Delinquent, Devil's Gold, all for free. You don't have to be a subscriber on the Substack. You don't have to have been a paid member for it. You're getting that for free, because
Awesome.
that is essentially my way of saying you're committed to this, and I want to honor your commitment while we
Mhm.
work on getting things. Because I also will admit, part of the problem is that we're trying to cover the entire production cost, and so that's not just Kevin's art. That's also my audio editor's fees. That's also cover art for the various releases. And because that's also going up against printing and shipping costs,
Mhm.
that's why it's currently at 5K. This is still literally this is probably one of the most inexpensive projects on the market, short of me just making a novel, where it's
Yeah,
like you're
and
covering.
what happens, I think, is a lot of people think, "Oh, well, they just shoot for a number, and it's not necessarily correlated to what it's actually gonna take to get it done." So, I think it's great that you have, been transparent about what it would take to do things, at this degree, at the
Yeah.
degree that you're wanting, at the pace that you're wanting. But one thing that I also know with this is that you've been very, um, you've been very committed to this series. So, for anybody who's concerned about it, like with the second chance campaign, and I fully expect you to knock this thing out of the park one way or the other, um, especially considering um, I'm sorry, the time of the year, and I mean, there's just a lot going on right now. You know what I mean? It's hard to get the eyes on the project, and so I think you've done a great job. I appreciate you talking to us about it, man. So,
Yeah,
uh,
thank you so much for having me on about it too. And just to make one last appeal throughout all of this, because
mhm,
obviously I've told you what it is you're getting if you back the campaign, what you're getting, if you back now and we don't make it, so you have a holdover until October. Um, my other thing too about this is that this project has been probably the very definition of the Iron Age as a concept. One, I was there from literally day one.
mhm,
When raised, I'm not even there. There are so many coincidences in timing with this series. It's frightening. And I'll tell this next time because I've told this a bunch of times. But the fortune cookie story, where a story detail from the very first story I wrote for the series and addressed from the general manifested in a fucking fortune cookie. I shit you not. To the fact he makes that video, the Iron Age cometh, I believe is the name of it.
yeah,
If not on my birthday, either the day before or the day after, because I know I published my entering the Iron Age article, which I got a boost from Razor on way back when in 2022, like the day after he had made that video, because I'm like, this is what this series is all about. 36 No one is crazy enough to make 365 infantry. No one is crazy enough to try and do it at genuine pulp prices. Like I always do, I wish I had more props on hand right now because I always do this to people. Do you remember when comics were like a couple of dimes? Do you remember when all it took was 10 cents to buy a Shadow or a Doc Savage, and you got all this incredible entertainment value packed at literally pennies on the dollar? Like,
mhm,
obviously, I can't go back there. I can't go back to the days where, gas was like 2 cents a gallon. But, one, I can dream, and two, I can get as damn near close to it as I can. And that's what I've been doing with 365 all the while. Um, so it's been, yeah, and also just another thing too, and this is pure providence happening on
mhm,
Wednesday. Even if you don't back us here on Kickstarter, 365 Infantry has been a regular participant in Hans G. Schantz's base book sale, and they're doing a fall edition, and we are putting the entire ebook library up for 99 cents. So that is
wow,
not just, I've not just, I'm not just doing, because in the past I've kept it so the magazine is it's its standard price, about $3 per digital
mhm,
issue, and all the main annual collections and the Roger Steele novella, those go up for 99 cents. Not this time. You get the 100th story, you get the digital version of this 100th story edition. Like, let me also take a moment to appreciate that real quick. In 2 years,
mhm,
I've written 100 stories in this series. And I've gotten, and I mean, you can see it down in the word on the street section, I have gotten some pretty solid praise for that
mhm,
work ethic and for what we've been cranking out over these past several years. I am committed to this series. I've got other stories, other ideas. You've seen some of them in Anvil issue 3. You've seen some of them in Go West #1, and you're going to see plenty more to come. I got things I can tell you, things I can't tell you. But through it all, this has been the series that's been keeping me going the most because it is 100% my own vision, my own creation. No one else
mhm,
is doing it. No one else is doing it in this exact way, in this exact style, and with this sheer commitment to the pace of the old school pulp model. So, if
mhm.
nothing else, if you want to be part of something that is quite literally once in a lifetime, like I'm not, again, last car salesman pitch, you ain't getting this from any other guy. If you want to be part of a, once in a lifetime chance in trying to bring back genuine classic Rock'em Sock'em Pulp Fiction. It hits you every chance we get.
Hmm.
This is the series to back. You know, it's got buckets load of absolute insanity in tow. So if you want, your manic post-apocalypse cyberpunk action, we got it for you. But if you also want something if you also want something that's a bit more contemplative, there are elements there too. That's why I say, at the end of the day, 365 Infantry, it's everything that I want in fiction and everything that I hope you want in fiction. It's entertaining, it's thought
Hmm.
provoking, but above all else, I just hope it makes your day, really, at the end of the day. That's it.
Awesome. Well, I mean, what more can you ask for? In this day and age with all the wonderful excitement going on everywhere. So, with that said, I'm going to bring up. Let me hop over here. You can find his work over at 365 Infantry over on Substack. You can also find him at 365 Infantry on X. And over on YouTube, you are Quality Candor. So if you want an
Correctamundo.
entirely different uh, set of
If you
ramblings
want,
from Jake here, you can check
if
out Quality Candor. He's got a lot of interesting things to say. He's the most boomer of Zoomers that there is.
pretty much.
Yeah. So um, with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here because my camera's white balance is apparently screwing up, and I'm also
Meanwhile, I
my
have the
brain
light of
is
God on my side back there.
yeah. Well, at least that's consistent. I don't know why, but I just flared up all of a sudden. Anyway, uh, so with that said, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Um, Jake, thank you for being
Thank you for
here and
having me
telling us
on.
about your project. I wish you the best of luck. And to everybody who is in chat, thank you for joining us. I will see you next week, probably for some more scalding, um, depending on how things go. Regardless, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good one.
Godspeed.